The air was hot and wet. I drove down a country road and a storm was behind me. The sky flashed with lightning and the wind was strong. I turned into a driveway and at the end was an old house. The paint peeled from the walls and the porch steps creaked as I went inside. My uncle sat in his chair and the TV was on. His plate was empty, and he stood slowly and hugged me. "Claire," he said. I hugged him back, and his hands were thin and shaky. We sat down, and I got food from the stove. We talked, and I told him about my job, and he told me about the people in town. Most were names I did not know. The storm grew louder, and the power lines outside shook in the wind, and they made a twanging sound. My uncle looked at the window, and his face was tense. "That sound means trouble," he said. I asked what he meant. He told me a man had gone missing years ago, and it happened near this place. He had seen lights on the road, and he had heard shouting. And then the car was gone. Only deep tracks stayed in the mud. The police looked, and nothing came of it, and the man's wife moved away, and people stopped talking about it. "But I hear it in storms," my uncle said. "That sound like metal, and like someone walking in the dirt." That night I tried to sleep, and rain hit the window, and the wires clattered. I thought I heard footsteps outside that were slow and heavy. I stayed in bed, and my heart raced, and I stared at the ceiling until I fell asleep. In the morning, the storm was over, and my uncle made coffee and eggs. He looked tired, and he said nothing more. I left, and on the road, I saw fresh prints in the mud, and they led to the trees. Weeks later, my uncle died in his sleep. That night, a storm came to my city, and the wires outside rattled, and I thought I heard footsteps in the rain. This is not just a story. It is something I remember and I cannot forget. It started with a weekend trip, and I went with my brother David and two friends, Mark and Sarah. We wanted peace, and we wanted a place far from people. We packed light, and we carried only what we needed. The first day was calm, and we set up camp near a small stream. We cooked on a fire, and we sat together. We talked about work, and we laughed at small jokes, and nothing felt wrong. The second day was the same. And we walked, and we rested, and we returned to camp. At night, we watched the stars, and it felt safe. The third night was different, and the air grew cold, and the sounds of crickets stopped, and the silence was heavy. Sarah asked, "Do you hear that?" We listened, and a dragging noise came, and then a thud. Mark said, "It is an animal," but the sound came again, and it was slow, and it was heavy, and it was repeated. We sat near the fire, and Sarah held David's arm, and I tried to stay calm. The noise circled us, and it was like someone pulling weight through the dirt, and then a snap came, and a branch broke close by. David turned on his flashlight, and the beam cut through the trees. For a moment, there was nothing, and there were only trees and shadows. Then we saw movement, and a figure stepped back behind a trunk. We could not see the face, and we saw only the outline of a man, and he was watching us. My chest tightened, and none of us spoke. Mark whispered, "We should go." We packed fast, and we left most of our gear, and the sounds followed. Branches broke, and footsteps moved behind us. We walked faster, and then we ran, and the light shook in David's hand. I looked back once, and I saw the man again, and he was closer now. We did not stop until we reached the main road. A car passed, and we waved it down. The man never showed again. Later, we told the police, and they found our camp, but they found nothing else. They said it was probably a hunter or a stranger passing through, but I know what I saw, and he was watching, and he was waiting, and I never went back.
Lauren and Daniel were together. She liked the city, and he liked the woods. He asked her to go camping, and she said yes. They drove down a long, empty road, and they stopped when the car could not go farther. and they walked through brush until they found a lake. They set up a tent, and Daniel was happy and Lauren was not. At night, Lauren woke and she heard footsteps, and they were slow, and they circled the tent, and they stopped close to her head, and then they went away. In the morning, Daniel said it was an animal, and Lauren did not believe him. Later, Daniel went to look around, and Lauren walked alone, and she saw a small cabin, and she went inside. On a desk, she saw papers, and the papers had notes about people. And she read them, and some notes were about her, and they had her name, and they had time she ate, and they had when she slept. She put the papers back, and she ran through the trees, and she tried to find the tent, and she was lost. After a long time, she found the clearing, and the tent was there, and the car was there, and Daniel was gone. She searched for the keys, and they were not in the tent, and they were not in the bags, and they were not on the ground. The keys were gone with him. She sat on the dirt, and she looked at the lake, and she was shaking. Someone had been watching, and they knew her name, and they knew her life, and Daniel never came back.
I need to tell someone about what I saw.
The police said the family just moved, and they said there was no sign of trouble. But I know that is not true. I was their delivery driver, and I knew them for a year. Families do not leave like that, and not without saying anything. Their house was at the end of a long road, and I drove that way each week. The road was quiet, and no one lived close. The family was quiet too, and the parents stayed home. The little girl waved at me sometimes, and they seemed normal. One day, the mailbox was gone, and the post was pulled out of the dirt. I thought a truck hit it, but there were no tracks. I went to the door, and the mother opened it. She looked tired, and she asked if I saw cars on the road at night. I said no, and her hands shook. The next week, I saw a dark SUV in their drive, and I thought it was family or friends, but no one answered when I knocked, and the curtains were closed. After that, the mail started to pile up, and their car never moved, and the house was always dark. Some nights I saw headlights deep in the woods, and they went out fast when I slowed the truck. One night, I brought a package after dark, and the porch light was off, and the house was silent, but I heard a phone ring inside, and I knocked, and I heard quick steps and then nothing. The next day, I told the police, and they came with me. The house was empty, and all the furniture was gone, and all the clothes were gone, and everything was gone. The deputy said they just left town, but no one leaves like that, and not in one night, and not without a word. Now the house is still empty, and the drive is bare dirt. I still see headlights in the woods at times, and they go dark when I slow the truck. The family is gone, and I know someone took them. I went to my friend Claire's wedding. I had not seen her in years, and she was marrying a man named Daniel, and none of us knew him well. The ceremony was quick, and Daniel did not smile, and he looked serious. Claire looked happy, but she looked nervous. At the reception, I watched him, and he did not eat much, and he did not dance, and he only stared at people, and his eyes followed Claire everywhere. I went outside for air, and when I came back, Daniel was at the door, and he blocked me. "You have known Claire a long time," he said. "Yes," I answered. "You should let her live her new life," he said. He leaned closer and he said, "Do not interfere," and then he moved aside. I found Claire sitting alone, and her makeup was smudged, and she held my hand under the table, and she whispered, "Do not leave me." Daniel stood far away, and he kept watching us. I left early, and the next day I called her, and she did not answer. And by the third day, her number was gone. People say she is on a trip, and I know she is not, and I keep hearing his words in my head, and he said, "Do not interfere." Now I lock my doors at night, and I think Daniel remembers I saw too much. I moved into an apartment 2 years ago. It was small, and it was on the 3rd floor. The building was old, and the floors made noise, and the walls were thin. At night, I heard voices. I thought it was neighbors. Sometimes I heard laughter, and sometimes I heard arguments. It always happened late at night. I did not care much at first. After some time, I noticed one voice. It was always the same man. His voice was rough and low. He kept saying the same words. One night, I heard him say, "You sleep now. I watch." I turned on the lights, and I stayed awake until morning. I asked the neighbors. Most said they did not hear it. One old woman said the floor talks, and she told me not to listen. I tried recording. The first 2 nights, there was nothing. On the 3rd night, there was silence, and then the voice. It was close to the mic. "You sleep now. I watch." I was in bed, and the door was locked. After that, I felt afraid. The shadows looked strange. My cat stopped walking into the kitchen. She sat at the door and she growled. 3 nights ago, I woke up at 3:11 a.m. I did not know why. The apartment was silent, and the city was silent. Then I heard the voice from under the bed. "You sleep now. I watch." I did not move. I stayed still until morning. Later, I checked the recording. The voice was clear, and I also heard a sound like cloth on wood. I told the manager. He checked and found nothing. The police came and they searched. They found a crawl space under the building. They found a sleeping bag and some tools. They found holes in the floor under my unit. They found small cameras. A man had been living there. He moved under the floors at night. He listened and he watched. They caught him. He did not explain. Now I sleep with the lights on. My cat goes into the kitchen again. The sounds are gone. But sometimes I wake at 3:11 a.m. and I wait for the voice.